there you go.
Oh, I love that you said that. I love that you said that. I speak to people on a daily basis about how they're using and implementing AI, and it's almost like it's backwards thinking. They're really trying to make their old thoughts faster instead of thinking new thoughts or new ways to do things. It is absolutely crazy to me. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's podcast, we have Mark Foreman from Buzz 3D, and he is going to share everything he's been doing, what he's working on, and he's going to share a little bit about his business and how it impacts him as an entrepreneur. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's nice to be here. I mean, basically, if I always say, if anybody is in a position where they need to know my wisdom, they are seriously in a problem area. But if there's any nuggets people can take from it, I'm more than happy to share. But in my case, we've been going, and you probably have permission, Kesi, to fall asleep during this part because you know all this from what we spoke about last week. But we've been going now for about 30 years, and we started our company way back in 1996, and we saw the internet was starting to boom. It was just emerging at that time. This is really the olden days, I think, for a lot of your viewers. And we were a tiny company with very little behind us. We didn't have any, major resources or anything. So we decided that instead of trying to compete with everybody else who was trying to grab a piece for themselves at that time in the dot-com bubble, what we would do is try and position ourselves for where the internet was going to go. So we thought, well, in 5 years' time, once the dot-com bubble bursts, whatever reforms out of the rubble, we'd be positioned to say, well, Internet V2, we can now capitalize on. And what we did was we thought, okay, the internet of the day was very much two-dimensional. It was, if you wanted to look at anything or go shopping especially, you were scrolling through endless pages, and this was 30 years ago. So from our point of view, nothing really has changed. It looks a little bit nicer, but nothing's fundamentally changed. And we didn't expect it to take 30 years, but it's taken this long for infrastructure, bandwidth, and other things to catch up with where we wanted to take it, which was to go from this 2D, very unnatural, scrolling, page-based model to a much more realistic, three-dimensional shopping environment. And this is not to be confused with Meta, who came on the scene. Again, this is probably ancient history for a lot of people as well now, but about 5 years ago, between 3 to 5 years ago, they pushed hard to try and get people to move to metaverse spaces, which were conceptualized and three-dimensional. And the problem with all of that is very difficult to scale, looks nothing like the real world, and has to be managed independently for a retailer by a group of people whose sole focus is that environment. So they didn't make any effort to kind of link it into real world. So coming back to ourselves at Buzz 3D, we thought, no, what we wanted to do was make it possible to shop online in a real world environment. And for that real world shopping experience, and we didn't know how yet, but somehow to help the physical stores refine and improve their layouts and their setups to improve their sales. So we saw it as a kind of self-reinforcing loop. And what we didn't expect was for it to take 30 years to actually get to a point where the internet was ready for this. And I won't bore you with all of those decades of what we did to develop the software, but we began with the concept that, again, going back in the day, there was 3D, but it was primarily in gaming. And we saw a huge amount of opportunity in corporate circles to use three-dimensional software to help people interpret dry data, like spreadsheet data and all of that sort of stuff. And we did a lot of projects for a lot of people, which again, I won't go into. We fell into what I'll call white label hell, which is basically we agreed that our name wouldn't be used, but our customers could use our technology. And we ended up doing a lot of work. We sort of fell into market research, actually. We ended up doing a lot of work for a lot of the sort of top companies, the brands we all know. And we were lucky enough to come to the attention of a major US-based market researcher. And they were doing physical store research where they would stock out shelves and they would monitor members of the public who were invited in to shop. And what they were doing in the store was noted, and this became data analytics that later drove whether shelf A or shelf B was the better performing shelf. And we call these shelves planograms. I say it's a shelf. It's a collection of shelves across an aisle, and that whole structure is usually constructed of a main planogram, which is where the products all fit on the shelf. And I think the analogy I used to you, I mentioned last time to you, was if you've ever been into a supermarket for one item and come out holding 3 carrier bags, that's planogramming at work. Somebody has made an effort to put some really good store messaging, product positioning, what they call adjacency, product color recognition, style recognition, contrast. It's all designed to make products stand out and be appealing. And we know that's true because we'll go around the store and say, hey, that looks nice, I'll have that for tea. And then you get home and you look in your cupboard or your fridge and you don't fancy it. Yeah, I'll just have something else. And that's because it's not presented in that way. So context, okay, and because we'd spent quite a long time developing a 3D solution that could be adapted for store simulations, we actually fell in with a company in the US to doing this market research stuff, where they said we don't want to do it physically anymore because that really is a major manpower effort. What we want to be able to do is do it virtually, so we do it on computer. Now, at the time, this is going back to sort of 2008, 2010. At the time, the internet had been fairly linear in its growth in terms of bandwidth, but there just at that point began much higher bandwidth emerging. So, and this was primarily in various different spots across the world. It was expensive, but the price was coming down. And what we found was that although we created a brilliant piece of software for simulating a store, allowing people to walk around like a game, just walk around the shelves, tap on a product, pick it up, take a look at it, add it to cart, go through checkout and so on. It all had to be done using a physical space, which they called a shopper lab. And that was pulling people in, sitting them in front of a PC, quicker than watching them shop, in a real store. Right. It still had its own baggage that came with it, and it was difficult to scale up. And we eventually realized that we had an opportunity to create our data analytics in line with the customer experience. Whereas the people we'd been working with, they wanted to sort of ring fence what they did, their magic that they applied to that data. So we had to hand the data over, and then they had to process it. And that was another area which required a lot of effort. And we thought we could accelerate that hugely. And where this speaks into the internet at large is we began working with major drinks manufacturer, Coca-Cola. They had a problem. One of their fastest moving markets was in Turkey. And they were finding that the process of getting accurate business planning insights was actually taking so long that by the time they developed the insights to plan the business out, the Turkish market was moving so quickly, the insights weren't valid anymore. They needed to be wrapped and gone through again. So we helped them do various things, including integrating. We took our 3D environment, we integrated eye tracking into it, we did inline data analytics, and we shortened that whole cycle from about, I don't know, something like 18 weeks down to something like 2 or 3 weeks. And this was highly effective for them. I think they even won an award for it, which was nice. Again, white label hell. Nobody knew it was us.
You're talking about it, and I'm like chomping at the bits. I have so many questions about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can pause at this point, ask away, and I can pick it up if you
want. Let me just stop you, because white labeling. Okay, so what was that experience like, and would you ever do it again?
Well, it's very difficult. In a young company, or youngish company, you don't like to turn away business. Right. And you always, as a smaller company with an entrepreneur mindset, kind of a startup mindset, you're always in the back of your mind thinking, I don't want to get these guys annoyed. I don't want them to think that we're difficult to work with. I want to make adopting our tech easy. So you agree to that. It pays the bills, but it doesn't actually, and this is all with hindsight, it doesn't actually advance the company, because by the time whoever you're working with has finished their project, you're back to square one looking for yet another customer of a similar type. What you hope is you can continue working longer term with many customers. And, we did that. But there was always that problem that nobody knew who we were. And that is, I would say to anybody, yes, white label it if you desperately need to bring in the finances, which obviously most companies do. But try and explore other ways of promoting yourself through SEO, through press releases and other things, blogs and so forth, to try and get the attention of what you're doing out there. If the company who you're dealing with lets you, and they may not. So you have to then make a decision. Do I want the contract or do I want the visibility? And in many cases, you can't have both. Mm-hmm. And it's just that simple. So you just have to make that determination as a business owner.
Wow. There is so much here. Okay, let me unpack that. Okay, so a lot of the times these major companies have like licensing where you can't use their name even when you're the one working with their company to do this end result. What happened? Like when you decided to stop white labeling, and you're essentially starting all over, right? Because no one knew who you were. Yeah. What did that look like for your business?
We decided to do a hybrid model where we had a concept for technology and solutions. And this goes back to what I was talking about with regard to the way the internet was changing. So I'll come back to that in a second, if I may. But we decided that we'd be quite open to white labeling if doing so paid for development of a wider system that we could then sell. Ooh. So we were careful to make sure that what we developed for customers wasn't their IP, it was ours. And we were fiercely protective of the IP. Also of theirs as well. We made sure it was clear, this is what you own, this is what we own. And there are many times where companies will try and put clauses into the agreements, in the contracts, that imply that they own anything you do. And what I would say again to business owners is just be strong about that, because if you've got to the point where you're giving away what you develop, you might as well just walk away from your business. So usually if you're providing a service and the service is important, they will at least, and it's no to use the phrase, it's no skin off their nose to say, okay, you keep what you develop, but we get the benefit. Mm-hmm. And that's the approach we took. And around this sort of 2016 time, which is when we were working in Turkey, we decided that one of the biggest barriers of adoption that we had was physically people having to come to a computer, sit down and use it. And fortunately at that time, bandwidth was rising. People could get higher bandwidth. Also, compression was better. YouTube was on the scene, so many people are used to working with video and that sort of thing. So we decided that we would pivot and move our technology in a different direction. And what we now do is we do exactly the same shelf simulation, but we are in fact the only service providers at the moment who bridge what I call the 3 silos, because retailers tend to work in silos. So you have in silo number 1, you would have a planogram team, and they would build planograms. They'd be very good at it. There's dedicated software for it, and it's brilliant. Silo number 2 is you build the world's best planogram, you then need to test it. So to test it, you have to put either you roll it into the store, 1 or more stores, very expensive, and if it's not working well, you've lost revenue from that store because you've gone down instead of up in your testing. Or you do a survey. You set up an online survey with a panel of respondents, 1,000 respondents or 100 respondents, whatever, and you get them to look at the shelf, and you'll ask them to do things like, imagine you're shopping from this shelf, and you will ask questions about their view of the shelf, which you've just taken from the planogram software, but it's a static image. If you wanted to make that image interactive, so let's say you don't ask them questions about their intent, you actually measure what they do, which is the more accurate way of doing it. The physical effort involved in going from a planogram, from the planogram silo, and moving it across to making it interactive in the survey silo is astronomically difficult. It really is. Where we came in is we decided that we would cure that pain. We would sit in the middle and bridge the 2 silos. So for us, what happens is when you build a planogram with our tech, it comes ready-made, fully interactive as a URL that you can just drop into the survey, and then people can interact with the shelf. And then the 3rd silo is data collection. How do you measure what people do? How do you analyze it and summarize it? And we've decided to build into our system exactly that. So when people are using the shelf, we just monitor on the back end exactly what's being clicked on, what the timings are, all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is they will go through checkout. It's like a fake checkout. They go through the checkout, and then it writes a data file to our back-end system, and we summarize and aggregate the data, give it to the client, and literally the whole process could be done in a day. It actually takes to go from raw data to a working physical planogram, an interactive planogram, used to be measured in weeks. We do it in about 5 to 10 minutes. And we're pretty proud of that. And
Wow.
There's also a little overlap with AI here as well, which people might be interested in, which is we started using Google's AI to ask it questions on the search engine. And we asked it the question, which is the best planogram software for surveys? And Google's AI came back and said, there's no planogram software for surveys. You've got to work in your silos. You've got to do it in the silos. Not exactly in those words, but it did say, if you're going to create a planogram, use the right software. If you then do a survey, you have to convert it, and so on. So I took that as a challenge, and we had to work out how to convince Google's AI that we actually exist.
Wow.
And it wasn't easy. There's a number of threads and strategies to this, and we've actually got a blog on our website. If anybody wants to go to buzz3d.com and look at the blog, one of the blogs, I think it's about the 3rd one down, actually tells you exactly how to do this for your business, just using us as an example. So that might be of interest to a lot of people.
No, absolutely.
Now,
I want to definitely jump into that too.
Yeah. If you now, and I hope I'm going to be not having egg on face, but if you now type into Google, what is the best planogram software for surveys, it recommends us, which was really gratifying to see. But it's an interesting journey because the world has changed so much, going from where we started with 2D interactions to a 3D simulation that really was a dead end because you couldn't scale it. The human effort involved was immense. We eventually decided we just couldn't scale it up, to what we have today, which is something very fast, very scalable, fully automated, and you can scale it to, thousands of respondents. So we're understandably we were proud. We're very proud of doing that. I'll take a few minutes to myself and occasionally pat myself on the back before thinking of the next problem.
No,
but, that's the journey.
It's crazy because I think about the fact that you started so many years ago. From our very first conversation, I'm like, when you are someone that creates some technology that doesn't exist in a market that is slow to respond, right? You literally had to sustain the business for all those years. Yeah. Is that why you went into doing the white label portion of it, or
it has to be? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a necessary sacrifice. Yeah, necessary evil. It helped us, as I say, it helped pay the bills. But it's not something that once you reach a certain point, you can actually say, no, we're not going to white label this. It is a service that we're offering generally, and if it's being done independently for one client, I think it's a very different conversation than if it's a general service that any of them from that industry could hop into. So I think that's the line of demarcation.
If you are an entrepreneur that starts based on a technology, so for example, you guys started, you're like, okay, the internet is here, and you have this really big idea. If you had to go back in time and give that version of yourself some advice, what would it be in order to maybe accelerate your growth as a company? Like, looking back now, what advice would you have given yourself?
Well, the first bit of advice I would have given my younger self is don't spend so much time on your hair. That's the first one. The next one after that would probably be prepare for the long haul. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Don't overextend, because that is a major core issue of many young companies collapsing. Because what happens is they get a great idea. The founder and the founding team are usually brilliant. They get an investor on board. The investor pumps money in. But what then has to happen is the investor wants to see a return. So the pressure is usually headcount. Why aren't you using my money to hire more people? Or, it becomes one of those. So what you end up doing is getting into what's called a race condition, where you hire more people, your burn rate increases, the money that you got doesn't last, you have to do more, get more investors, hire more, and it goes on. And what ultimately happens, and I think we discussed this last time as well, if you're not careful, your ownership stake of the company could be gradually diluted. And a lot of founders end up losing their company. They get kicked out of it. Now, if the objective is an exit strategy, okay, that's one thing. If, like me, it's a passion, it's something that you've built from nothing, it's in your DNA. I used to go out on dates and I'd be critical. It's like, oh, it's not for me. All you talk about is your work. And it's like, but it's so much a part of you and you're so emotionally invested into it. I still have that argument now with my wife, by the way. But you're so emotionally invested that it's 50% or more of your personality, your character, and your motivations.
Yeah.
So and I apologize if you can hear our dogs barking, but
no
saw a cat. But that would be my advice. Would be just relax, don't overextend, try not to do too much too soon, and take advantage of every opportunity. Just keep open to opportunities. And I think that's all I could really say, because it's interesting. Even the mistakes that we made, you could look back and say, well, actually, had we not made those mistakes, we wouldn't have learned why they didn't work.
Right.
would have just looked it through. We'd have looked out to a position. And in truth, where we are today probably couldn't have happened any sooner anyway, because the world wasn't ready. And as you say, the industry very slow moving to react. And even now, the biggest problem we've got is we've solved the 3 silos, but the industry is so entrenched in those silos, they don't actually see it as a problem because it's just the way things are. Of course, it's painful to go from planogram to survey. So that's why we've got a survey team who we've trained to do this. And they make excuses to actually service their legacy thinking. Whereas if you're an innovator and you're in one of these big companies and you're looking to really streamline, obviously, I mean, the first thing people do is they think, oh, let's cut heads. Let's just reduce the workforce. It's always a short-term thing, is that, in my opinion. Your first option should always be, we could streamline, that would free up X% of our workforce. What can we then apply them to? What can those people then do? How can they contribute? But certainly, from our point of view, what we'd like to see is a lot more people doing a lot more planograms and planogram testing, but also using the knowledge they gain from our system to help physical retail. Because at the moment, e-commerce and physical are completely siloed, 2 totally different silos again. And I come back to this concept of shopping from a page. It's the most unnatural thing. And a few months ago, I began doing online shopping for my supermarket shop, weekly supermarket shop. God, it's painful. It is the most difficult thing. And I was consistently, and again, if retailers are still watching this, then this is probably the thing that they should think about. I was consistently seeing a basket value of around about 30 to 40% lower than I would spend in the store. And that's because I was seeing it in store as a nicely laid out visual feast that I could just go and I'll have that, and that, like one of these. Or at home, I'm looking at it on a page. I'm having to think, what do I need? And every time I'm finding an item, I'm going through my mental shopping list, trying to think of what I've forgotten. And yet, if you were able to shop from a planogram, you wouldn't have that problem. And it would certainly, and another thing, entrenched thinking we were talking about, it is generally accepted in the world of e-commerce that e-commerce is lower value than physical. I wonder why. And it's basically because it's very difficult. I nearly swore there. It's very difficult to actually shop and interact with an e-commerce experience and for it to feel natural and fun. And for you, it really is. And I think to me, it's an obvious thing. We're doing, and we're kind of getting over the market research side now, but we're doing market research with a fake shelf and a fake basket, and we're posting fake figures from real shoppers. They're from their fake shopping sessions. It has a 92% alignment to real world. Okay, so I say fake, but it is very, very accurate and predictive. But
I want to hop in there.
Yeah.
So basically, it has a lot to do with the psychology, right?
Yes.
Because when you can see it, it's easier for you to want to buy more because you're seeing more. So you're really getting into the whole psychology, as well as you guys have figured out how to place things and where to put it in order for people to want to spend more, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the art of the planogram. The whole point of the planogram is to put things in a place where it balances margin and profitability with visibility. So that's the trick of it.
Okay.
And what I was going to say was, if I can just finish this one point, because it's mind blowing and it could be of very great interest to a lot of shoppers. It's why the hell aren't we shopping from these? Why are we still shopping from a scrollable page? And to my way of thinking, if you could actually shop from a shelf and you could fit out the shelf very rapidly, as we can, you could try hundreds of different planogram combinations and then capture the data from actual shopping and see whichever one works best. Or you could make tailored planograms for different people. You know, if you're diabetic and you don't want anything with sugar in, it could be very, very quickly put together in that way. Traditional retail has been very slow and they're risk averse. But the one who decides I'm going to shop this way, that they are going to really change the market, and it's only going to take one, and for that one to be successful, and the rest are going to have to follow. And although we've taken a rather tortuous route to it, again, we're the only company positioned ready to serve that market. So it's really exciting, scary. You're constantly second guessing yourself. And what we're facing up against now is the market conditions are actually maturing to the point where it can happen. And one of the reasons why I'm doing podcasts like yours, and thank you again, Kesi, for having me on, is it's now time, according to our guys who do the marketing and communications, for me to be rolled out in front of the camera and actually start telling people what we've been up to.
No, absolutely.
That's the story.
I couldn't agree more. Just looking on it visually behind you, I have so many like ideas that go through my head. I'm just like, oh man, this would definitely revolutionize how people shop, spend. Yep. I mean, if you can see it, I mean, why wouldn't you get it? Yeah.
And from a retailer standpoint, why shouldn't the e-commerce basket be every bit as large? I mean, we know that our data is 92% accurate, so it should be 92% of the value of what they would spend in store, which it is. But retailers who already use this technique, by the way, they trust it for store planning, but they don't do it for e-commerce. Wow. And that just doesn't make any sense.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're here speaking about this now. You know, I am really glad that you're here speaking about it, because there are so many applicable ways that anyone could be able to hear what you're saying and just use it in their everyday business. So for an entrepreneur that may not be in the e-commerce realm, you know, they could be using something that they use every single day to plan their business, but not implementing it in their business, right?
Yep.
In the same way that e-commerce is, they're using it, they see how it works well to plan it, but they're not using it and providing it to the consumers.
Yes, and the reason for that, I'm convinced, is because it's vertical thinking. We come back to the silos. And the people who are above the e-commerce silo are not really thinking horizontally to touch point all the others. And that's the change that needs to happen. And I think whilst margins are tight and retailers are looking for new ways to engage people, and you've seen this with AI, you will have seen people
into that with you.
There you go. You will have seen that retailers are spending a huge amount of money on AI that does recommendations. And even now, I'm sure I would hope the CEO of Sainsbury's or Tesco's is watching this and thinking, Mark, you don't know what you're talking about. We are spending a fortune on predictive analytics. We are going to suggest to that customer exactly what they need before they know they need it. Good luck with that. That's the first thing I would say. Speaking as a customer, okay. But the other aspect is, if you've got AI and your only purpose behind using it is to speed up how they use your old system, there's something strange going on there. You shouldn't be using it that way. And it's like the Henry Ford thing about, you know, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse.
Yeah.
Whereas he had to totally rethink. There you go.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that. I speak to people on a daily basis about how they're using and implementing AI, and it's almost like it's backwards thinking. They're really trying to make their old thoughts faster instead of thinking new thoughts or new ways to do things. It is absolutely crazy to me. It's crazy.
Well,
but then it goes back to, you really don't know what you don't know, right? So they don't even know what it is they should be thinking of in order to ask it those questions, right?
That's right. I mean, and it's perfectly natural. We're still in the very sort of glittery hype phase of AI. And it's all tech follows this pattern. People get really excited about it. You get a big bubble. It bursts because reality then sets in and limitations become apparent. But then from that, you get really useful adaptations. And we're kind of, I don't think we're anywhere near the bubble bursting yet with AI, but a lot of people are starting to familiarize themselves with it. And for me personally, the large language model, the Chat GPT, the being able to talk in plain English, that's fantastic. Because anybody can then explore what AI can do for them. How can it help them? And it takes a lot of the pain out of visualizing their thoughts. Even if, I use it as a sounding board. I'll say, what do you think of this? And it critiques or whatever. But you still have to recognize it can hallucinate. It can get things wrong. You can't trust it 100%. Things are getting better. But this is all down to the way it's programmed. But that said, if you can treat it like a really keen intern straight out of university who thinks they know everything, but is very good at making up reasons as to why what they just told you actually isn't quite right, just take it with a pinch of salt, but find ways, find the pain in what you're doing. And then discuss that with the AI, but invite it to comment about new potential uses and new potential ways it could help. Because it says it's not innovative, but it's surprisingly imaginative. And everybody can do it, and you've just got to be careful. You've got to give it some very core, firm instructions first. Only give me things that are based on latest up-to-date information. So don't tell me something you know to be wrong, that sort of thing. Don't hallucinate. Fact check everything. If something is unknown and it's just something that you're postulating, you tell me that. Make sure I know that. But you over time develop a relationship, and it starts to adopt your way of thinking and your voice. And I think, again, the AI guys have done a fabulous job with that. But where its basic use case is being applied at the moment, in terms of predictive analytics and in retail, just to bring it back to there, it just feels like such a waste. I want to be on that store, and I want to be able to type into the AI. I've only got 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I really need to shop for a dinner party. Can you suggest things that I can buy? And by the way, when you've suggested it, show it to me in a visual array. So, like this. So I can actually see at a glance 100 products, 300 products at a glance, and I can then make the determination of what I want to buy. As opposed to you giving me endless scrolling flat lists of the same thing. So that's where we're pushing our technology. But to begin with, we're focused on the market research sector whilst we build out a lot of the back-end engineering to make that possible.
Awesome. In the show, I like to ask our guests to offer entrepreneurs that are starting their business some tips. What have you learned along the way that you think would be really important and impactful had you known it before?
Okay. You guys have got Shark Tank, I think it's called. We've got Dragon's Den over here in the UK. When I watch that show, I cringe when I see people say, I want $50,000 for 20% of my business. And I absolutely wince when I see that, because to those people who are sacrificing that percentage, that's everything to them. That's their future, their livelihood. The 50K sounds a lot when you need it, But once you get past that point, and I know many people who've been through the Dragon's Den, Shark Tank experience, the ones that I know have said, had I thought about it, I would have been better off not trying to scale as quickly and instead to try and bootstrap things. So I could scale through sales rather than through investment. And I would say wherever possible, if you're thinking of taking on investment, be very careful before you do it. And if you are going to do it, make sure that it's tied up nice and tight in an agreement where you're protected. But the good news today, which we didn't have back then, is ChatGPT is actually very good at analyzing documents, picking them apart, and telling you whether or not there are any clauses in there that could be dangerous. And what I would say to people is spend time with ChatGPT, train it on your business, tell it what you're doing, how you do it, as long as you're comfortable revealing that. Treat it like a member of the team. And then when you ask it for advice, if you give it a document, a legal agreement to look through, it will look through it through the lens that you need it to look through it in order to establish that that document is safe for you to sign. And I would say now that's a new tool that's come on the market only in the past couple of years. But I would say for entrepreneurs, if you're not using it yet, please start using it. But with all the caveats I've mentioned, don't trust it 100%, check everything, get it to check itself. But it's certainly something that even if you do intend to use a lawyer, contract lawyer, starting with a document that you've created through ChatGPT to best match what you want, or something that somebody's sending you in that you've asked it to critique, is a really good starting point for you to know when to bring the lawyer in and how to protect yourself. So I would say always do that. And I may have mentioned this before, I can't remember. Don't overreach, don't overextend, don't hire too many people. Anything you can do to keep things as small and as tight as possible, do it. Mm-hmm. And what that means is the company gets a chance to breathe. And it's only when you hit the point where you can't expand the company anymore until you get more people. The traditional route there is sales staff. If you're actually trying to sell something and you haven't got the hours in the day to physically sell it and ring around and go through that process, then you can start justifying expanding your team. But even then, I would say do it slowly.
I appreciate all those things that you've given us and all the words of wisdom and everything that we've
what they're worth. Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate it. Anytime we're able to get a guest on our show and they have the insight to be able to advise someone that's on their journey, I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be asked. Everybody has their own path to follow. Mm-hmm. So don't assume that yours will be the same as ours. But if I've given people just a reason to have a third think or a fourth think about what they're doing and how they're doing it, that can work wonders in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So it's just a way of trying to separate yourself from your passion and then being critical, but not too critical. I'll give you another Henry Ford quote. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing as well to keep in mind. Many people are out there telling you won't achieve what you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Prove them wrong. Do it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely. I love that. Mark, thank you so much for being a guest today on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And hopefully if the subject matter changes and you want to know anything more, I'll be more than happy to return as a guest. You'll have to stop me repeating myself if I do.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. It's been an amazing, and I will definitely link all of the links that you've said, the blog post, so that they can look and see how they can actually use ChatGPT.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's nothing else out there on the web to tell people how to do it. We had to learn it. But we were a unique case. But I thought the first thing I ought to do is share this information. So there it is for anybody to use.
Love it, love it, love it. Appreciate everything. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us and tuning in today. Mark, it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, and good luck, everyone. Genuinely wish for your success. Really do.